There's a growing unease within the Christian community about how religious freedom is being approached and treated. In recent years, we've seen some significant changes in how religious freedom is treated, and these shifts have many people worried. Particularly for Christians, there's a growing concern that the landscape we've always known, where religion and public life intersect freely, is changing dramatically. This isn't just about not being able to pray in school anymore. It's about what our future might look like if these trends continue. Imagine a world where it's not only unpopular to be Christian, but illegal to practice your faith openly. Let's think about what had been happening. There was a time when Bibles were a common sight in classrooms and praying before lessons was routine. These practices have faded away over the decades. A key moment was back in 1963, when Madalyn Murray O'Hair, an outspoken atheist, successfully campaigned to have Bible readings and prayers removed from public schools. This was a pivotal moment that many point to as the beginning of a gradual erasure of God from public life. Now, you might hear some say that Christians should stay out of politics and focus purely on spiritual matters. However, this perspective might be missing the bigger picture. Our faith doesn't exist in a bubble. It's part of every aspect of our lives, including how we are governed. If the rules and regulations of our country don't allow us to practice our beliefs, then how can we live out our faith fully? Consider what might happen if the government decides that preaching from the Bible could offend someone. Could pastors be restricted from delivering sermons that include certain Bible verses? What about sharing your faith online? As more people use social media to express and share their beliefs, there's a real possibility that biblical content could be censored if it's deemed offensive by the standards of the day. And it's not just about what pastors can preach or what you can post online. There's also the question of religious counseling. Many Christians seek guidance that aligns with their faith. But what if laws are passed that make it illegal for counselors to provide advice based on biblical teachings? This could be another way that practicing your faith becomes challenging. Imagine living in a place where you can't openly practice your faith without facing legal consequences. This isn't just a theoretical concern. In various parts of the world, including some Western nations traditionally seen as protectors of religious freedom, there are signs that the ability to express religious beliefs is under pressure. For instance, quoting the Bible has already been labeled as hate speech in some situations. This trend points to a future where even reading from the scriptures in public could be a criminal act. If a pastor quotes a verse from Leviticus or Romans that clashes with modern views on topics like marriage or sexuality, could they be accused of hate speech? These issues highlight the urgent need for Christians to understand what's at stake and to become more involved in safeguarding their religious freedoms. It's a call to action, urging believers not to take their rights for granted, but to stand up for their faith in an ever-changing world. It seems like every day, we're seeing more signs that our society is veering off the path of what many consider traditional moral values. The instances where what was once deemed inappropriate or taboo are now celebrated or even rewarded with fame and fortune are troubling. This shift isn't just about changing styles or new cultural trends. It's a deep-seated change in what our society values at its core. Let's talk about the issue of immorality. It's not just the old-fashioned idea of right and wrong that's at stake here. We're talking about basic human decency. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to see promiscuity being celebrated, almost as if it's a virtue. Social media and various online platforms have turned personal exposure and indecency into a lucrative business. People are literally making millions by sharing content that many would consider explicit or unholy. And what does it say about us as a society? Jesus himself warned us about the dangers of gaining worldly wealth at the cost of our souls. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Mark 8, verse 36. This isn't just a rhetorical question. It's a call to examine our priorities and values. Technology, while a marvel in many respects, has also made it far too easy to access content that many consider immoral. With just a couple of clicks, things that were once hidden away in the darker corners of society are now in the mainstream, accessible on every smartphone and computer. This normalization of what many view as immoral behavior is contributing to a general moral decay, a weakening of the communal fiber that holds our society together. This omnipresence of what many would call sinful behavior is concerning. It challenges us to look deeply at our moral compasses and consider how we might restore a sense of decency and virtue in our community. We're seeing a culture that not only tolerates, but often promotes behaviors that go against the grain of biblical teachings. The prevalence of such attitudes is a stark reminder of our need to reassert moral integrity and the importance of spiritual guidance. Switching gears, let's consider the problem of slothfulness. It's becoming a significant issue. Our nation seems to be getting lazier. While many are genuinely struggling to find work and facing real barriers, there are also many who seem to prefer living off the generosity of others. This isn't just about being unemployed. It's about a lack of willingness to work. Our welfare programs are crucial. They support those in need and provide a safety net for the vulnerable. However, these same programs can be misused by those who see them as an easy alternative to earning a living. It breeds a cycle of dependency and entitlement, where the desire to work hard and achieve through one's own efforts is diminished. Laziness isn't just a bad habit, it's considered a sin in the Bible. We often hear sermons about various sins, but how often do we hear about the sin of laziness? The Bible is quite clear on this matter. In 1 Timothy 5, verse 8, we read, "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." This underscores the importance of diligence and personal responsibility. The book of Proverbs offers plenty of wisdom on this topic. The book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 4 tells us, "The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied." This illustrates the contrast between those who wish for things and those who work hard to achieve them. The rewards of diligence are not just financial, they're also spiritual and moral. Another poignant verse from Proverbs is chapter 10, verse 4, which states, "A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich." Here again, we see the value placed on hard work and the consequences of avoiding it. These biblical teachings are not just ancient words. They are guidelines for living a life that is fulfilling and righteous. As a society, And especially within our communities of faith, we need to do more to encourage hard work, personal responsibility, and a strong moral compass. It's time to challenge the growing entitlement mentality and bring back a sense of personal achievement and pride in one's own efforts. We need to talk about these issues, not just in our homes, but also from the pulpits and in our community gatherings. Only then can we hope to steer our society back towards a path of righteousness and integrity. As we delve deeper into the discussion about the state of our nation, it's clear we're at a crossroads. The erosion of reverence for the sacred and the divine that once held our community together is alarming. The signs are everywhere, and they point to a society moving away from the principles that once anchored us. Remember the days when passing a church meant a tip of the hat, a sign of respect? That simple gesture spoke volumes about the reverence people held not just for the building, but for what it represented. Today, that sense of respect seems to be fading into the background, replaced by a casual indifference that's hard to miss. This shift isn't just about hats and greetings, it's about the very soul of our society. Churches and religious symbols once held a sacred place in the hearts of the community. Now, they're often seen as relics of the past, irrelevant to the modern day. This isn't just sad, it's a dangerous sign of where we might be heading. The Bible warns us about this kind of spiritual decay. In Romans 1:25, it says, "They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen." This verse captures the essence of our current predicament, a society more concerned with material things than spiritual values. The implications of this shift are profound. A nation that forgets its reverence for God is a nation at risk of losing its moral compass. This isn't just about following rules. It's about understanding the foundation of our ethics and values. Without this foundation, we're left adrift, vulnerable to every wind of change and fancy that sweeps through. In this critical election year, we're not just deciding on the next leader, we're deciding on the direction of our nation's soul. The stakes are incredibly high. The decisions we make today will echo in the lives of our children and grandchildren. What kind of legacy do we want to leave them? The book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, verse 14, offers us both a warning and a promise. If my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. This is a call to action for every believer. It's not just about voting. It's about praying, reflecting, and acting according to God's will. Now, more than ever, we need to lift our voices in prayer for our nation. We must pray for wisdom, for courage, and for the hearts of our leaders to be turned towards God. Pray not just for a return to old ways, but for a renewal of our spiritual commitment, for a revival that will bring our nation back to its foundational beliefs. Imagine the impact of a united prayer front standing firm against the tide of moral and spiritual decline. Imagine our communities once again embodying the values that bring life and hope to our nation. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's the power of faith in action. But prayer alone isn't enough. We must also be willing to stand up, to speak out, and to act on our convictions. We're called not just to be hearers of the word, but doers also. The book of James, chapter 1, verse 22, challenges us. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. This means getting involved, being engaged, and not shying away from the hard conversations. We're living in a time when being a Christian might soon mean facing more than just indifference. It could mean facing outright opposition. We're already seeing the early signs. Christian teachings labeled as hate speech, pastors challenged for preaching the Bible, and believers ridiculed for their faith. Our religious freedoms are indeed at risk, but this isn't the time for fear. It's the time for faith, for courage, and for action. Now is the time to reaffirm our commitment to God and to the principles that have guided us for so long. Now is the time to stand firm in our beliefs, to show the world the strength and the love that comes from a life devoted to Christ. Let's not leave a legacy of complacency or defeat. Let's leave a legacy of faith, hope, and unwavering devotion to the Lord. Our actions today will determine the spiritual landscape our children will navigate. Let's make sure it's a landscape filled with light, truth, and the profound peace that comes from living a life in line with God's Word.